Well, Jeremy, you absolute penis. Let's begin. Now, of course, you'd think, wouldn't you, after the recent drubbing the Conservatives got in the local by-elections, which, of course, remember, were apparently safe seats, that they would do everything they could do to make sure Labour doesn't eventually win the election this year, which at this rate, unfortunately, looks like it's going to happen, because remember, they were safe seats, and therefore Labour theoretically shouldn't have won them. But either way, you'd think that would switch something on in their heads and say, right, we need to push out a load of tax cuts or whatever quickly so we can try and turn that situation around. But no, if this article's anything to go by, it appears that Jeremy Hunt has decided to put the boot in, if anything, because it says that he has apparently ditched plans for a 2p cut in income tax at next month's budget, reports have apparently suggested. So why are you playing at, Jeremy? I mean, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, so surely any tax cuts would be better, wouldn't they? I mean, according to this, it said the Chancellor is possibly set to reduce the basic rate of income tax from 20% to 18%, as well, of course, looking to slash national insurance employee contributions by 2 percentage points as an alternative. But appears not anymore. A Treasury source has said the world has changed. Everything you might have thought was going to happen at the budget may not happen at all. Presumably, of course, because Britain apparently entered a recession on Thursday following 2 quarters of negative growth. However, from what I've heard, one way of turning the recession round is to get people buying loads of things. So surely in that case you would think there is one tax he could cut, and that is, in my opinion, VAT. Because remember, VAT was an EU tax, and from what I've heard, and therefore, as we're no longer members of the EU, surely, if I'm right, Jeremy Hunt could actually cut that tax to anything he wanted to. Within reason, of course. I mean, he could put it down to 17.5% that we used to have, or maybe even lower than that at 15%, as it was for about a year before they hiked it up to 20%. But no doubt, of course, he is not going to do that, is he? Because it will pee off people in Northern Ireland. But why would it pee off people in Northern Ireland? I mean, they're part of the UK, aren't they? Well, surely it's all down to Rishi's dreaded Windsor framework, which means, from what I've heard, they've basically stuck in the EU rules, and therefore if we go ahead our own way, and they can't, that's bound to cause loads of friction, isn't it? Which, let's face it, no government really wants, does it? And therefore, if anything, that surely means that we're not going to diverge from the EU rules at all, doesn't it? But that surely is a tax that he could cut, which is, let's face it, going to be helping everyone out with practically everything they buy, surely ramping up the economy. It's just a pity that no one in government has thought about that. Maybe, you should all share this video to him to help kickstart the cogs going, eh? Either way, though, Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride apparently warned that high levels of worklessness are part of the reason for the recession. And Mel said the shadow of economic inactivity, people not working and not looking for it, continues to hang over our nation. He added, though, I find it deeply concerning that 2.8 million people are now off sick. Well, don't we all, Mel? I mean, what about all this work from home crap? I mean, surely it's about time everyone returned back to the office. I mean, I don't know about you, but how much of a pain in the bum was it? You had to ring companies up when you hear screaming kids or whatever going on in the background when you're trying to sort something out. It was just an absolute nightmare. And obviously people are sick is surely adding to that, isn't it? However, he goes on and says, missing out on the financial, social and health benefits we know that work brings, and denying the engine of growth are fantastic British businesses and the labour they need. But of course, Jeremy does seem to be sitting on the fence with all this, because it says the Chancellor would not be drawn into confirming suggestions that further tax cuts could be announced at the spring budget on March the 6th, which means he's still humming and hawing about it, isn't he? Still thinking about it. Hopefully, he may harness that Brexit benefit that we could actually lower VAT if we wanted to. But as I said, I don't think that's going to happen. But it also says that the Chancellor did hint at his preference for tax cuts, suggesting the countries with lighter taxes did tend to grow faster. And of course, he added, but I would only cut taxes in a way that was responsible. And I certainly wouldn't do anything that fueled inflation just when we are starting to have some success in bringing down inflation. Well, the thing is, Jeremy, reports have suggested that you're not going to cut the taxes, apparently, from what this article's anything to go by. So what is it then? I mean, why can't you just give us all that little glimmer of hope that you're not going to screw us over for another year? Or let's face it, until Labour gets in power, which they more than likely will do in this year's general election. So therefore, let's face it, we're going to be screwed either way, aren't we? Well, finally, we've got some good news after the dreaded cost of living crisis that's been going on for the last few years. And just what is a glimmer of hope? Well, according to this article, some bills are going to fall by almost £300 a year. Just what are those bills? Well, apparently they are energy bills. That's right, about time too. I mean, they've been going up faster than I would if I saw Catherine Jenkins on the telly. But either way, it says energy bills are predicted to fall by an average of 15%, equivalent apparently to £293 in annual savings, as apparently a mild winter meant high gas storage levels, which surely is going to be a good thing for us, isn't it? A closely watched forecast by Cornwall Insight indicates energy bills from April to June will apparently drop to £1,635 a year for the typical user, which, let's face it, is still a lot more than they once were. However, it's surely not going to be that much of a kick in the gonads that it has been for the past few years. And that is because, in comparison, apparently the average yearly costs from January to March stood at £1,928. For the rest of the year, however, bills will be lower, Cornwall anticipates, and such a drop will result in the lowest energy bills for 2 years. Hooray! About time too. Although, as it does say, energy prices still remain above pre-pandemic levels and households will continue to struggle. And it does make me wonder just how much electric bills will go up by when more and more people will buy EVs before the 2035 deadline, when apparently the government are not going to let us actually buy new petrol and diesel cars anymore. Although, to be honest, between you and me, I think that deadline will be pushed back if anything. But either way, if more people use electric, then that's going to create a supply and demand situation, isn't it? Where they'll put the price up like anything, presumably. Although, of course, there is a small chance I could be wrong. But don't worry, because that's not the end of the good news, because apparently from July to September there'll be another fall. It seems that apparently prices will be falling faster than someone like Katie Price's knickers, because they're going to fall to an expected £1,465 a year, saving the average bill payer apparently £170, which conveniently is around the cost of a TV licence fee, isn't it? Which, when that's hopefully axed in 2028, that'll save us another £170. Personally, I don't pay that already because I don't watch or record TV live and just watch on demand services apart from the BBC because, well, they're a load of crap in my opinion. But anyway, there will be a tiny slight rise though from October to December, but it will still be lower than what it will drop to in April, because according to this it will be £1,524 a year, and of course still lower than the current price cap. They've of course also gone on a bit about their green agenda, because it does say despite the positive outlook, the UK's energy system still remains volatile apparently due to reliance on gas imports. The chief executive of Cornwall Insight, Dr. Craig Lowry, has said. And he goes on and says, our energy system is still walking a tightrope and we cannot apparently be sure of another political or economic crisis that wouldn't send the bills straight back up. He also says that if we don't switch to sustainable energy and cut down on volatile imports, bills are likely to stay high. So I guess that means he wants loads of wind farms everywhere, or solar spread across the countryside, or wherever. Either way, though, if that does eventually happen, and things go their own way, which generally tend to do, don't they, they've got no excuse for raising prices all the time, it seems, doesn't it? Now, of course, they'll say, oh, well, it wasn't a very windy day today. The Smug one wasn't walking past and blowing off. Or, it wasn't just sunny. We've got to think of something. But either way, though, the official price cap announcement for April will be published, apparently, on the 23rd of February, and I will let you know what that is as soon as I know.